Hello all, welcome back to another session of the Analyst for 26th of August 2023, where we try to analyze the most important articles from the Hindu and the Indian Express. Here, looking at the developed contents, we see the very first article is about startups. The article is about how Indian startups are becoming more and more successful and how a startup known as Zepto has become the latest unicorn in India. Then we'll be looking at the revised national curriculum framework, which is looking to totally reinvent the educational scenario at our Indian schools. In the next article, we'll be looking at the recent visit of our Prime Minister to Athens, Greece, where we will be looking at India-Greece relations in a very brief manner. In the next article, we'll be studying the India Smart Cities Awards, the award of which went to Indore and Madhya Pradesh. The next article will be looking at how districts are created in India, and also we'll be looking at how some states are also created, named. And before beginning the very first article, I want to tell you the handouts for the discussions of this current affairs today will be given in the description below, so you should definitely check them out. The very first article is about the recent unicorn in India. It is Zepto, and it has recently raised around $200 million, and it is very important from our GS3 part of our syllabus. The context is that Zepto is the first Indian startup who became unicorn in 2023, and it has raised around $200 million, and this is taking its valuation to around $1.4 billion. Right now, before going into the details, let us understand what is a startup. Now, to understand this, imagine that a new company has been set up, right? And this new company needs some funding, needs some encouragement, right? These new companies generally get funding from, say, local friends, families, relatives, even some banks, some rich industrialists will be helping the company. If the company becomes profitable, if the company's ideas are good, and they will be also good for the entire economy, because they will be ultimately companies who will be creating new jobs, right? So the government will also be helping them. So startups are those new companies who are, according right to our Ministry of Commerce, fulfilling these 5 criterias. Now, what are these 5 criterias? The very first criteria is that a company must not be more than 10 years to be a startup. According to Ministry of Commerce, a startup must be a company whose age is around, say, 10 years. Then the company type can be a private company, right? Can be a limited liability partnership, so it has to be a private corporation. Then the annual turnover for all these 10 years of the startup must not exceed 100 crore in any of these 10 years of financial years. Then the next eligibility is that it has to be an original entity. That means it must not be a corporation which has, say, split up from an existing corporation, right? For example, say if tomorrow Tata decides to split up into 2 companies, will these 2 new companies will be startups? No, because they do not fill the first criteria of 10 years. So it has to be a totally new original company. And finally, it has to do innovation, and this innovation means it has to do innovations in new technologies. For example, say earlier we used to go out to hang out close restaurants, food chains, right? Now we can do what? We can directly order food via online services such as, say, Zomato, Swiggy. So this is actually using technology in food delivery services. So we have to use technology and innovation, and that has to be scalable, or that has to be profitable in nature. So the government has kind of given this following eligibility of startups, right? So these are the eligibilities of startups in India. And also, apart from this, we have some types of startups based on their valuation. Now you must be wondering, this is the image of a cheetah, this is the image of a gazelle, and this is the image of an unicorn. You must be wondering why I put all these images here. Now let me tell you, according to valuations or the total value of the startups, we have different types of startups. The very first startup is known as a cheetah, whose valuation is in the range of around 200 million to 500 million dollars. These are the startups who are worth between this. Next comes our gazelles. Gazelles are those startups who are worth between $500 million to $1 billion. Next, we have unicorns. Unicorns are those startups who are worth more than $1 billion. Respective examples of cheetah are around, say Paperfry, Dunzo. We have gazelles in India such as Zepto and Rapido. Then the unicorns in India are, say, companies like Farmizi, Urban Company. So these are according to their valuations. And what about valuations beyond $1 billion or unicorns? We have something known as decacorns. Decacorns are startups who are worth more than $10 billion. We also known as something hectocons. Hectocons are worth more than $100 billion. And hectocons are examples such as SpaceX, ByteDance, what the very successful companies as of now. Okay, now in this discussion I want to take the state of startups in India. According to Global Unicorn Index released by Harun, which is a private research organization based from China, they showed that the number of startups in the entire world is around in the range of 1300. Now out of this, around 666 are based in the United States, around 300 plus startups are there in China, and around 138 startups are there in India. So this makes India home to third largest amount of startups, right, in the entire world. And let me tell you, out of 138 startups, around 70 startups are by Indian co-founders who are not actually based in India, right? They are based in, say, countries like Western European countries and even United States. And out of 138, the rest of the 60 startups are actually based in India, on Indian soils, on Indian borders, right? So this is a distribution of startups in India. And we have seen, see, these are the number of unicorns in the entire world, and there are around 138 unicorns in the entire India, right? And according to this report only, the number of gazelles in India is also third in the world, right? So the gazelles are also third number according to the unicorns, correct? Okay, now let us see why startups like Zepto, right, like Farmizi, like Urban Companies are booming so much, right? There are some reasons behind the successful startups. The very first is that India is home to the world's largest market as of now. So we have around 1.3 billion people living in India as of now, right? So the market is huge. The demand for goods and services is huge. Then the population of India is also very young, and they are also very tech savvy. This means that the average age of an Indian is around 20 years old, 28 years old. This makes the companies such as the new age companies very lucrative to actually design products catered to the young Indians, right? And also, the young Indians also use smartphones, and you must be knowing this very properly, right? So all of us have smartphones. So we use our smartphones for various goods and services, specifically the things that the startups cater to. Then the government support is also very crucial in India. In India, we have these many schemes related to startups, such as Startup India, eBiz portal, Atal Incubation Centers, then scheme for support for international patent protection in electronics, because patents are very important to startups, because startups are built on ideas, innovative ideas, and patents protect them. Then we have Mudra Banks, which offers finance to startups, multiplier grant scheme to help startups go beyond their risks. Then we have credit guarantee fund trust for MSMEs. Then we have software technology parks, new gen innovation and entrepreneurship development center. And finally, we have also some schemes related to startups in dairy industries, such as dairy processing and infrastructure development fund. Now, these all are government initiatives who are trying to boost startups, because I have already told in the beginning, startups are good for the economy because they create employment. So the government sector will definitely benefit in doing this kind of activities. Then there is also a strong venture capital ecosystem. Now, venture capital is actually a form of investment, right, by rich individuals and rich companies in startups, because startups are very promising in nature. They show huge potential in the future, right? So there will be some rich individuals, some companies, some equity companies who will be trying to invest in the startups initially and take profits later. So this ecosystem is actually very good in cities like Bangalore, who is the startup capital of the India, right? Then the talent pool in India is also on an increasing trend. Some skills such as say cloud computing, emerging technologies such as artificial intelligence, machine learning. So these are kind of catching up with India. Then the global reach of the startups are also very encouraging. Specifically startups such as, who are involved in these online services. So they are actually having their clients mostly from the abroad countries. And also I have told that 70 of the unicorns, right, are actually based abroad. So we have a good alumni network of startups also across the entire world. Then also, if we can understand the recent economic condition of the entire world, it is not so positive. But with respect to India, India is one of those, hopes in the entire world which is positive. India is actually seeing positive economic growth as of now. So the startups are also, the investors are also, the stock markets are also very optimistic with respect to Indian startups. And finally, the 2020 to 2021 phase in which we have seen the COVID pandemic. So during this phase, our Indian startups actually became many unicorns. Companies such as Nykaa, right? They actually filed IPOs and got themselves listed as stock exchanges, and these further boosted their valuations. Right? So this phase was very, very important, because in this situation of pandemic, the goods and services demand over the online sector actually saw a very big boost. Right? So these are also some of the reasons of the successes. Now there are some issues. The very first issue is the concept known as Death Valley Curve. To understand Death Valley Curve, we have to understand these are new companies such as startups, right? These require some funding, some help from the, say, local institutes, governments, investors, right? So, initially, they will not be making much profit, or they will be making mostly losses. For example, say, if you think of, say, Uber, Ola, Swiggy, Zomato, they give you many offers, right? They give you offers. They hire staff, right? And these are new companies. They operate at such a big level. So they have costs, they have business costs, and the profits are not so much initially. So initially, they do not see much profits. And that is why we can understand, if we take cumulative profit and loss on the y-axis here, and the time duration on the x-axis here, we can see that most of the startups, while they are in their research phases initially and development phases, and here they actually look at technology transfer, product launches, right? So they do not see any profit. They actually run in loss. And this loss is actually very difficult for any private company to bear, right? So up till a particular amount of time, they actually have to bear losses, right? Now, as soon as some of the new product becomes a success, then they start to earn more and more revenues, right? Then they start to increase their profits. So up to the launch of their first success, right, they actually suffer losses. And who actually fund these losses? Some seed funds, such as, say, this can be your friends, relatives. Then some other seed funds can be with respect to banks. Then funding gap will be given by investors, right? Some early funding, right? So these will be actually driven by funding by your, say, private individuals. Say this can be even by the government. So this is the actually known as valley of death, because this is a very serious time of a startup where it needs to earn some profit, launch some new products. So any startup needs to survive this valley. And in India, there are many startups who don't even reach up to this. Apart from this, there are some regulatory hurdles, such as, say, land acquisition, right? Data privacy laws, different labor laws which have not been, say, implemented as a code in all of the particular states. These are some regulatory hurdles which startups face as initial costs. Then there's also some amount of talent shortage in India, because you have to understand, in countries like China and US, where most of the population is kind of skilled, we still do not have that amount of skills, right, in our working population. Then there are also market competition, first from the domestic companies such as, say, Reliance, Tata, which are established companies who also have presence in the digital medium in which the startups generally operate. So they face domestic competition. They also face competition from foreign companies, right, such as, say, Google, Facebook. So these are also giving stiff challenges to them. And finally, the amount of customer acquisition and retention is also very difficult for sometimes for the startups, because initially they will be giving offers, and finally they, at one point of time, they have to pull out those offers. Then customers won't be happy, so they must be trying to prolong this investment phase, right? So this is also a very important point with respect to startups. So what should be the way ahead, right? The way ahead to meet these challenges is to provide more funding, right? The government can, say, provide more and more seed funds, right? So then the government also must try to reduce the regulatory burden, such as, say, labor reforms, land reforms, right? Then it must be trying to improve the infrastructure. Infrastructure can be in terms of co-working spaces, or government can think of some innovative ideas of giving same working spaces to some companies, right? It can give some rental agreements. Then it can also think of startup accelerators, which are actually platform for various startups to come together, right? Have funding, have mentors and incubators, right? So this will be giving some infrastructure to the startups also. And finally, we will be trying to create a favorable policy environment for startups. So, say, policies such as Make in India, right? Policies such as, say, agricultural development, they all need to be converged to also give some leeway to startups in India, so that we can have more Zeptos as unicorns in India. Now, if we look at the next article, it is talking about the revised national curriculum framework. This is important in GS2 because we have some issues related to health, education and human resources. So the context is that recently the government has released more than 600 pages of revised national curriculum framework. Now this is actually trying to update the draft released in April, and this was actually recommended by a 13-member steering committee led by former ISRO chairman known as K. Kasturi Rangan. So they actually sat down, they revised the previous NCF and they gave a new NCF, which we'll be looking at today. Now, what is a NCF to start with? NCF gives a framework for creation of school syllabus and textbooks, because we have to understand, in schools we follow some textbooks, rules, regulations, syllabus, right? So this is actually setting the school syllabus for entire of India. So the Ministry of Education generally does this, and not only about textbook, it also gives guidelines on various teaching practices. Now, according to last NCFs, Right, the past guidelines initially appeared in 1975, then in 1988, then 2000, and the last NCF we have is of 2005. And let me tell you, the NCERT books that you're reading right now is actually based on 2005 NCF, which actually focused on learning without burden, right? And also we can understand the old NCERTs that we read, right? They were actually based on larger syllabus, because the 2005 NCF actually reduced the syllabus, right? And it also brought some age appropriate concepts, right? So the NCF that we currently follow is 2005 one, and recently 2023 NCF is been proposed. Now the objectives is to foster critical thinking, experimental learning, right? Because these are the needs of our times, because our education system primarily focused on rote learning, right? Which is just, memorizing things without even understanding them. So right now the present NCF is focusing on experimental learning. That means learning with teaching and relearning new things. Then we must be also provoking the already inherent concepts with more and more critical thinking, problem solving skills, so that not only we are giving the students some content, we're also giving the applications of those. Then we must not only be thinking about the physical well-being. We have to think about the emotional needs of the student, the social context of the students, the intellectual capabilities of the students. So the recent NCF is also taking these things into the mind. Then the next objective is to enhance creativity. Creativity is important to bring in more innovation. This is also to prepare the students for the new challenges of 21st century. Correct? So, and these will be active from the next academic year, that is 2024 to 25. So expect some new NCERTs to, actually hit the market very soon. Right. So the NCF, the revised NCF is actually dividing the school education into these many stages. So let us understand these stages very properly. The very first stage is foundational stage, where it is covering from preschool to grade 2. So instead of class 2, we'll be now calling grade 2, right? So the next stage is preparatory stage, where it is from grade 2 to 5, middle is from grade 6 to 8, and secondary is from grade 9 to 12. So let us remember these stages properly. Okay. Now, what are the key recommendations which have been suggested? The first key recommendation is that we will be studying 2 languages in schools till grade 6 to 8, and a third language will be from grade 9 to 10, right? And these have to include one Indian language. That means the language that is native to India. Okay, so this is very important, because we need more and more promotion of our mother tongue, right? And education that is actually inculcated in mother tongue is more effective, because that education is more close to the student and to the children, right? Because if we make a particular child understand in their own mother tongue, that child can comprehend the world more better. Then from grade 6 to grade 8, we'll be having subjects such as languages, such as the 2 language and third language from 9 to 10. The languages will be there, maths will be there, art education will be there, physical education, science, social science, and vocational education will be the subjects from 6 to 8. Environmental education will be introduced in 9 and 10th grades. Specific times and weightage to all subjects have been specified, has been already fixed till grade 10. So this will be helping to evaluate the progress of students according to subjects. And in addition, additional enrichment period will be given to grades 9 and 10 students who can study a special subject according to their interests. Then from class 11 to 12, there will be mandatory of 2 languages. One language can be English, another language has to be an Indian language, right? Then there must be freedom for the students to actually choose between 4 or 5 subjects from various streams. The streams will be commerce, science, humanities. For example, if I say apart from English and your regional language that you have chosen, that is mandatory for you, you can choose 4 other subjects or 5 subjects. This can be say physics, this can be say philosophy, this can be say history, this can be journalism, right? And this can be accountancy. So if you see, I am choosing subjects cutting across different streams. So this is giving me the freedom to actually choose any subjects that I actually want to study. Right? So this will be not say based on say rigidity of say science subjects, commerce and arts, right? So we can study interdisciplinary subjects here. Okay. Now the last recommendation is that there will be twice a year board examination, right? And the annual system will be continuing in grade 12 for now, right? For example, the board's exam that is happening right now, this will continue. Correct? This will continue. But there will be a new semester system that will be introduced in class, say grade 9 to 12, where in say grade 10 and grade 12, the students will be required to say give 2 board exams, and the marks that is better in one of the board's exam, only those marks will be taken for calculation, right? So this is the system. And the board exams which will be say occurring for 2 times in a year, so they will be requiring vast amount of questions, and those questions have to be very legit, right? So that is why they have proposed a comprehensive test item bank also. So they are conceptualizing that there will be a software, right, who will be trying to automate the questions, keeping in the requirements of the particular grades. The consultation of the students, parents, teachers will be taken into view while considering this bank. Okay, so the way ahead, or what is the next in this, that the framework is been proposed, and this has been actually the revised framework. There was earlier a draft framework, and this has been the revised framework, and this framework will be going into the calculation while we are designing the next NCERT books. Right? So these will be the considerations in mind by the government. So it is now framing new textbooks, right? And accordingly, NCERT has also set up a 19-member committee to set up new NCERTs, or say to publish new NCERTs for grade 3 to 12 students. Correct? And let me tell you that while these are all the developments which are going on, right? Let me tell you, these are according to the National Education Policy Guidelines. But national education policy, the national curriculum framework are actually not binding on all the state government, because education is a state subject, right? Here, the government will be actually say giving recommendations, correct? Then we have to understand that this is an overhaul, of the entire school education system, correct? So this will be taking our Indian schools to the next levels. So let us appreciate these expert recommendations, and with this let us go to the next article, where we are talking of India and Greece, because this is important in our GS2, because we have something known as bilateral relations which are concerning India's interests. The context is that India and Greece have recently elevated their partnership to that of a strategic partnership, and they have pledged to double two-way trade by 2030. This is because our Prime Minister has visited Greece recently, and this is the first visit in around 40 years. So let us understand the significance between the two relations. Let me tell you, India and Greece relations go back far ago, right? Around say 2000 to around 4000 years old, correct? Because in 326 BC, Alexander the Great actually reached India for the very first time, right? We know. Then in 3rd century BC, Ashoka, the great Mauryan ruler, sent a Buddhist mission to Greece, right? Let us come to the recent times right now. In 1950, India and Greece actually formally began their international relations for the first time. In 1978, India opened an embassy at Athens. Then, in 1998, India and Greece signed a defense cooperation agreement, specifically in the backdrop of Indian nuclear tests. Then, in 2007, APJ Abdul Kalam, who was the president of India back then, actually visited Greece. And later, India and Greece signed a bilateral investment promotion and protection agreement. Correct? Then in 2018, India and Greece held their first joint military exercises. So this was the brief political relations between these two countries. Now let us look at other spheres of cooperation between the two nations. The first cooperation is between economic levels where actually India exports aluminium, organic chemical, fish products to Greece, and in return Greece also exports to India, or we can tell that Indian imports from Greece are say mineral fuels, nuclear reactors. These are the things that concern our economic interests between the two nations. Then when we talk of international forums, India and Greece actually support the reforms at the United Nations, right? Then in 1998, when India undertook their nuclear tests, we have to understand most of the Western countries actually contemplated imposing sanctions on India because they thought that India unilaterally did those nuclear tests. But Greece is perhaps the only country in the NATO that actually supported India by not only say giving support but actually coming to India in 1998. As I told, in 1998, India and Greece signed a defense cooperation agreement. Right? Their prime minister also came to India in 1998 and they signed an MOU on Memorandum of Understanding. And also we have to understand that on Kashmir, Greece supports us, and also we support Greece on their Cyprus issue, which is the issue that Greece and Turkey is embroiled in, because there are some conflicts in Cyprus who accord the conflicts related to their territorial claims. Correct? Okay. Then the next is about defense. In 1998, as I told already, the two countries signed their MOUs. Then they conducted Blue Flag Air Force exercise at Israel, where both Greece, India was actually a part of. Their Air Force was actually part of. Then INIOCHOS or INIO COS 23 Air Force exercise also took place between these two countries. Lastly, when we talk about cultural relations, India and Greece actually share many academic relations, university collaborations. Then we have tourism, healthy tourism between the two countries. And finally, there is also a strong Indian diaspora living in Greece. So these are the relations, spheres of relations we have to consider. Now, according to recent talks, we have to understand the significance between them. As I told, that these countries actually elevated their ties to a strategic partnership. This strategic partnership implies that they are no longer traditional partners. They are now strategic partners, that they will be helping each other in their strategic needs, be it economic, be it political, be it social. These countries will be collaborating on various portfolios. Then they have signed cooperation to including areas such as including more and more defense cooperation penetration, then security, infrastructure, education and emerging technologies. Specifically, they're focusing on transferring artificial intelligence technologies between the two countries. Finally, we are also looking at agreement between the two countries to combat terrorism and other transnational threats. Then the two countries also decided to cooperate on regional issues, such as looking beyond their regions such as say Europe and say South Asia. They are now also concerned in activities related to the Middle East and also Indo-Pacific region. The two countries also tried to cooperate on migration and mobility partnership agreement, because there are some Indians working in Greece. So Indian government generally wants some favorable migration and mobility between the two nations. And finally, they have tried to focus on doubling the bilateral trade by 2030. And here the Indian companies become very important, specifically companies such as say Tata, Reliance, Adani. They are focused on infrastructure building in Greece. So they are also trying to boost the bilateral trade by around 2030. Right. Now, what is the way ahead between these two nations? The two nations must cooperate more on defense and security, because we have to understand that Greece is a part of the NATO and it has some defense capabilities. So India can try to diversify its military partners. Then we have to understand that the economic relations is also very important, because the two countries have huge markets, and specifically India can focus on the Greece markets. So India and Greece must try to definitely double their efforts by 2030. And the emerging technology is also very important, because Greece, being a developed country by some margin, is also having access to technologies. So they must be transferring those technologies to India in good faith. And also we must understand that one of those crucial imports from Greece is nuclear reactors. And when India is trying to boost its green energy, nuclear reactors are also very important. And here the future relations between the two countries will be very important, because India is trying to achieve something known as a multipolar world, in which Indian efforts is actually at mobilizing support from all quarters of the world. Specifically, Greece actually supports India on Kashmir, on United Nations reforms. So India must actually base its future relations with Greece on such grounds. Now, the next article is about the India Smart City Awards. India Smart City Awards is important from a prelims perspective, and here let me tell you the context of it. The Union Housing and Urban Affairs Ministry has named Indore the best city and Madhya Pradesh the best state when it comes to the smart city projects. And here let us understand what are smart cities in the very beginning. See, smart cities are those cities who are having excellent amount of infrastructure, right? And also these parameters. That means they are smart with respect to economy, they have smart governance, smart environment, smart living, smart people, and smart mobility. That means cutting across transportation sectors, cutting across environmental concerns, governance, living standards. These are smart. And why? Because back in 2015, Indian government, or the government of India, actually launched a project to totally remodify existing cities. So these are around 100 cities who were selected in around 4 rounds of selections over a period of time since 2015. Now let me tell you, these are existing cities. These are not new cities. We are not building new cities. We are already selecting some existing cities who will be made more and more better. Correct? So these will be around 100 cities. And in 2015, when this scheme was launched, around 4 rounds of selection were done, and from these 4 rounds of selections, 100 cities were shortlisted, right? And the central assistance is around at 48,000 crore in 2015, right? And the total number of projects were around 5,000. So the initial deadline was around say 2023, but this was extended because the overall projects were not yet implemented. Correct? And each smart city was given 1,000 crore. And here we can look at some of the achievements of this mission. The first achievement is that around say 76% of the projects have been completed according to government reports, and the rest of the projects, they are telling that will be completing within 2024-2025, that is within next year. Then around 100 cities have actually set up their smart city plans, as they have already formulated how they are going forward. And 75 cities have established special purpose vehicles. These special purpose vehicles are actually some governance bodies where both private sector and government sector is there to actually realize the mission of how we can say invest in smart environment projects such as building renewable energy projects, how we can say evolve smart governance standards. So these special purpose vehicles are actually some governance mechanism. Correct. Now, let us come to the awards. Now, these awards has been given by the Ministry of Housing and Urban Affairs. Here, they have looked at criteria such as progress of the projects, then project outcomes, how good the outcomes are there, and finally the presentations that they gave at the award ceremony. According to that, the best city is Indore, and let me tell you, Indore is also the best city for around 6 years under the Swachh Bharat mission, right, under the cleanliness parameter. Correct? The next cities are Surat and Agra. According to the best state, it is the Madhya Pradesh, who was also the cleanest state in 2022 Swachh Survekshan survey. Now the following states are Tamil Nadu, Rajasthan and Uttar Pradesh. Now I am telling all these names because the rankings are very important when it comes to prelims. So there can be question that according to the India Smart Cities Award contest of 2022, rank the following countries in according to their ranks. So coming to this, according to built environment, Coimbatore actually came first when it came to their model roads, restoration and renovation of lakes, which is actually known as built environment. Then according to mobility and governance category, Chandigarh's public bike sharing and e-governance services won in this category. So these are the outcomes of this particular award. Next, let us look at event where new districts are actually created at Assam's. This is important. Why? In prelims we have Indian polity and governance, and the context is that the Assam cabinet has actually created 4 new districts to enhance governance. The 4 new districts are Bajali, Vishwanath, Hojai and Tamulpur. Now let us understand what is the process of creating new districts instead of going into details of this particular event. Now what is important is that we have to focus on a particular article of our constitution, that is article 243. Here it is written that subject to the provisions of this constitution, the legislature of a state may by law make provisions with respect to the creation of local institution in the state. And we have to understand that district is a local institution of a state. So it is the state who will be responsible for creation of a district. So in India, creation of new districts or altering or existing the borders of a district is with the state. It can generally do by an executive order simply, or it can also pass a law in the state assembly relating to this. Correct? Most of the states generally passes an executive order because this is the easiest thing to do. One of the last state that did this was Punjab, when it created a new district in Punjab, right? But here we have to understand that the Ministry of Home Affairs also has a role in this. It is not with respect to the creation of a new district or say altering its borders, right? It is about naming of a district. Say when you are trying to change the name of a district, or say when the state government is trying to say that I will be changing the name of a particular district. But here we have to understand that if I change the name of a district, I am also changing some very crucial addresses. So there a request has to be sent to the central department and agencies such as some Ministry of Earth Sciences, Intelligence Bureau, Department of Post, Geographical Survey of India, right? And the Railway Ministry, because we have to take clearances. When we change name of district or a railway station, we have to go through the Home Ministry and to this particular department and agencies for clearances. From there, we have to obtain a no objection certificate, and then only we can alter the name. But we have to understand with respect to the boundaries or with respect to creation of a new district, we do not go to the Home Ministry at all. Now, what are the factors that actually lead to this? The very first factor is that suppose the size and population of a particular area becomes too much, right, for a state to handle, then it can create a new district. Then for example, the economic and social conditions also of a particular district is not so good that it needs some special attention as a new district, then it can be created. Then the administrative and financial implications are also important. For example, say if a district has become so large that it cannot be administered, then a new district can be created. And finally, if there are some wishes from the people that a new district can be created, right, then it can also be done. But let me tell you, these are all at the discretion of the state governments, right? Now let us look at how states are created, named, and also their boundaries are changed. Now this is a totally different formula here. Here we have to follow the Article 3 of the Constitution of India, where only the Parliament has a say here. Now the process is that it has to first start with the President, right, referring the change or creation, naming or changing the boundaries of a state to the respective state assemblies, and their views will be taken. And let me tell you, these views, though these are not binding, these views are very important, because actually, say if you're building a new state, splitting or say naming a state, correct, we have to also consult them, right? We have to take their views, take their opinions. Though they are not binding, we have to take them, right? These are very important. Then a bill will be introduced in the Parliament for this, right? And this bill must be passed by both houses of the Parliament, that is Lok Sabha and Rajya Sabha. And here we have to follow a simple majority. And once a bill is passed, it will be requiring a President's assent, so that it will be becoming a law. So with respect to states, creation, naming and boundaries, a law is actually made by the Parliament, correct? And with this, we are concluding the discussion for today. I thank you for attending the session. I hope it was very fruitful. All the best for your studies. Thank you.